Run Wild Fred. Hello and welcome along to the Let's Talk Racing YouTube channel in association with Racing TV. I'm Joshua Stacey and I'm joined by Andrew Blair White, and we're going to look back on last weekend's racing, pick some bones from there, hopefully find a few winners for down the line as well. Before talking about this weekend's racing, which promises to be very good, I'm over at the Hatton's Grace meeting at Fairyhouse on Sunday. I can't wait. You've been over here a couple of times now. Is it just a top day altogether?
Yeah, it's a super day. I've been lucky enough to be there the last two years, pre-COVID obviously, with Honeysuckle winning a Hatton's Grace, so Apple's Jade winning a Hatton's Grace, and they're serious days, and usually you get such good pointers with the novice hurdle and the novice chase on the same card, and even that juvenile hurdle as well. So looking forward to having you over here and having you putting your moves on the dance floors again. I know you stay away from the camera with your dance moves, but they are just as good as mine, I'd have said.
Yeah, we might have to put a video at the start of the next one with what we get up to in Dublin. But to be fair, I'm going to have to be feeling a bit better than I am now. You'll have to bear with me. I'm a bit down. Not feeling great over the last 24 hours. Pluck up the energy to do this podcast. So if you do enjoy this video, please do hit that like button, and if it's the first time that you've seen us on your screen, subscribe as well, especially if you do enjoy it. We've got plenty of good content coming through the next month, and I think next week's video will be the November Cheltenham Festival anti-post update, which I'm sure we've had great listener and viewership over the last couple of months, so it's going to be good to carry it on, and there's plenty of talk around Cheltenham this time of year. I had a pretty good weekend as well with the best bets. Captain Morgs won at 5-2. Fleming's Tide opened up 7-4, went off 130 and won under Bryony Frost. So I was disappointed with Baddesley. I'd have actually probably made him my nap of the weekend, but he was very disappointed. I think he will still be winning races. I just need to find the trip and the conditions for him. But we'll talk about last weekend's racing then. We'll talk about the Irish stuff first. Bob Ollinger made his chasing debut. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I thought it was a decent enough effort from Bob Ollinger. I've seen a few thoughts from people, 50-50, some saying he didn't jump well, some saying he did jump well. As I say, I'd be somewhere in between. I think his engine is clear for everyone to see. He's got a brilliant engine. He's a brilliant horse, and I think at the end of the day, this beginner's chase that he's won will end up churning out winners throughout the year, whether it's in beginners chases or handicaps down the line with a few of those horses. I know you're very fond of that horse coming fourth, Coccolino, who could be a big handicap horse by the end of the year. Master McShee, Deal Kerr, Mercury Lane, plenty of horses in behind, and he's dispensed them pretty easily in the end. His jumping left a little bit to be desired up the straight. Personally speaking, next time out I'd like to see him a little bit sharper than that, but I'd assume he'll come on plenty fourth. The next plan does seem to be that race at Limerick on Stephen's Day, which is an ideal stepping point for him. And the only thing I suppose with Bob Ollinger is he going to have the Envoy Len treatment, really, where horses are not going to be too keen to take him on in Grade 1 company in Ireland, and he might get a few soft races, and we mightn't see that jumping really being tested until we get to March. But it was a pretty adequate start from Bob Ollinger, and very hard to oppose him in that 2.5 mile division.
Yeah, the engine is definitely there, and he's got so much speed. Yeah, his jumping was slightly disappointing up the straight, but overall I thought he jumped fairly well, and it was a very decent starting point over fences for Bob Ollinger. On the card we had St Felician, who won. I was very pleased with that. He's finally notched up a point for me on the 4 to follow, which is quite nice. I think I'm probably up to 2 or 3 points now on that. But Gordon mentioned that him in the same breath as Tiupu, who's I think 16-1 for the champion hurdle. St Felician ran in a novice race at the weekend, but he doesn't actually qualify for novice races at the Cheltenham Festival or after the new year, actually, because he won the race over in France over hurdles. Where could he go? Is he good enough to be in a champion hurdle picture? It'd be interesting. I think there's the Irish Independent Hurdle at Limerick on the 28th could be where we see him next. I think it's a Grade 3, won by the likes of Espoir de Lens. Apollo Games won the 2.5 miles novice hurdle, and I'm still not in love with him. The Bartlett or the Ballymore, it looks like he's going to go to the Lauders of Naas, which would kind of tell you that he might be looking towards a Ballymore.
Yeah, it does look like that might be the case, and I suppose the same owner-trainer combination as Ginto looks another type that might be an Albert Bartlett horse. So it's hard to see, whether they'll maybe try and get those two to run in separate races. Hollow Games is not a horse that's quite done it for me just yet. I just thought at Navan there, I know he's ended up pinging the last couple and he's ended up being very strong at the line, but coming to 2 out, he's got Ferdia coming up his inside with Danny Mullins for John Ryan, and Ferdia is a grand old summer horse, but he's no more than that. And the form of that race just doesn't look particularly impressive, I don't think. Maybe I'll be proven wrong in that count, but I'd have wanted him winning by more than he did, considering the odds he was and considering the race it was. I thought it was a really weak grade 2, and I certainly would be taking him on in the lower as an ace. I don't think he's got the speed. I know connections think he does. I'm not so sure, and I suppose looking ahead to the Royal Bond on the weekend where Gordon runs a couple, you'd be interested to see if one or two of them got beat, whether they'd step up and potentially be a Gordon's Ballymore horse, and that might precipitate the Hollow Games going back up in trip. That's something that certainly crossed my mind.
I wouldn't like him for the Bartlett, but he wouldn't be winning a Ballymore in any shape or form personally. And that Knowles and Ace race would be interesting because he'll definitely come up against speedier horses. You'd imagine Willie could send Kilkrutzer, Gerhard, Dysart Dynamo maybe there. One of them could go there, and they definitely have more toe than Hollow Games, so it would be interesting. Run Wild Fred, how much satisfaction did that give you? You finally got your day.
Yeah, fantastic. Look, he did it superbly in the Troy Town, even on ground that I didn't think would suit him, but then it was fantastic to see him jump so well, and I suppose they ended up, he's a little bit of a thinker, Run Wild Fred. I don't think he necessarily wants to go past horses too much, so they took out the middleman and just said, let's bowl him out in front. He doesn't have to pass anybody. And it worked a treat, and he's beaten some nice enough horses there in the Troy Town, beaten them really impressively. Look, I've backed him for the National Hunt Chase earlier this year. If he goes down that route, I just couldn't see him getting beat personally. He's got the experience, he jumps super. I know they like the Boss's Oscar from the same stable. From the Boss's Oscar's 3 chase runs, I couldn't think he'd lay a glove on Run Wild Fred in that race. Now, I know Gigginstown don't necessarily like the race, so it's a hard one, not maybe one to plunge in on at 9-2 at this stage, but I think if he ran in the National Hunt Chase, he wins.
Interesting. With the Boss's Oscar, there's a few people that are saying they're disappointed. They're only going to have one day in mind for him, and that's going to be at the festival. And if he was to win one of these beginners' chases that look fairly hot at this time of year, then his mark will be out the water. And I think they're just giving themselves options. Because if he has a mark in maybe the high 140s, you could go for something like the Ultima. I wouldn't read too much into the form of his current races or how he's running. I definitely think there's a better horse there. Right, let's talk about more Irish horses, but actually at Haydock, A Plus Tard in the Betfair Chase. He won it by half the track. He jumped impeccably. I think it was a jump at the second last, which was just beautiful. And he comes right up alongside Royal Pagaille, and Rachel then gives him another pull. He's one of those horses, he's only 7, and he's achieved a heck of a lot. He's a Cheltenham Festival winner, 2nd in a Gold Cup. Do you think it could be a case where he's just improving and he's getting better? He's only 7.
I have to hold my hands up with this horse. He's not been one that's ever floated my boat too much, but it's hard not to when he's winning races like this and winning them so impressively. And I think the jumping was absolutely superb, as you mentioned, and it was probably the first time in a 3-mile race that we've seen A Plus Tard put in a real complete round of jumping. Even when he won the Savills Chase last year, he was scruffy at times, ended up just landing him on the line, and then the Gold Cup he made a couple of niggly mistakes just when he needed better jumps. I suppose that's the one worry, that the last 2 times he's run at Cheltenham in the Ryanair and the Gold Cup, they've been, rounds that have been littered with little mistakes that have probably prevented him from winning a Ryanair and winning a Gold Cup, and that's something that he will have to iron out. And I suppose at the prices, would I be backing him currently at 7-2 for the Gold Cup? No, I don't think it's that great a price, but he probably, based off what he's done and based off the fact that Manella Indo is the slow burner that he is throughout a season, he is the rightful favourite at this stage. I think at the prices at the moment, probably Manella Indo's bit more appetising at 11-2, 6-1, but I think the two of them will be bang there, and it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if they're the 1-2 come March.
Another incredible jumping performance was Brave Man's Game in the Graduation Chase, and he looks very, very good over fences. He's got an incredible way of jumping a fence because he's a massive horse, yet he absolutely flies them. The engine's ridiculous, and he looks like he's got better with another year on his back as well. Look, Itchy Feet did an Itchy Feet, didn't jump particularly well, but he stayed onto the line. And look, he's a mid-150s horse, definitely, and Braveman's Game beat Fusil Raffles at Newton Abbot. So impressed with him at the weekend. And as someone that's put Galopin Deschamps up at 25s, I am slightly worried. Braveman's Game is polished. He looks an ultra-professional, even after 2 runs over fences, and he looks like the Quarto Stars next. The only destination I can personally see him turning up at Cheltenham would be the Festival Novices Chase over 3 miles. Tell me what you were thinking when Harry Cobden was there, motionless.
Seriously impressive, especially as you say, considering he's running against experienced and good rivals. You know, I know Itchy Feet is, he sometimes would break your heart with some of the jumps he puts in, because he is a very good horse. Pay the Piper's not a bad horse, was well beat. You know, he was only just beaten in the Colin Parker by a horse that's joint fab for the Ladbrokes Trophy. So it's decent enough form in the book, especially for a horse just making his second start over fences. I'd be with you in terms of, I think the only way he rocks up in a marsh is the unfortunate scenario that Bob Ollinger's injured himself in some regard and he's not there. I think once Bob wouldn't be there, I think he would be going to the 2.5 mile race pretty much 10 times out of 10. But they know how good he is. They don't want to waste another festival appearance looking up his backside, and therefore the 3 mile race looks a lot more winnable. And I suppose you'd have to be a little bit concerned, well I certainly am, with these Willie Mullins horses. Now the ground, you know, nobody can control it, but these horses are not getting an ideal season, because they're going to end up running potentially in a beginner's chase with Galopin Deschamps, for example. Beginner's chase at Christmas, do you want to even run in between Christmas and March? Then you're not fresh for March, but then you've no experience. It's kind of dilemmas that you could do without, because certainly in years gone by with the ground softer, Mullins would have had plenty of his good horses out already by middle of November, and he hasn't been able to do so. So a fair few horses there are stacked up on the back burner, and that would concern me.
Be interesting to see when they start Kilcrit and Sir Gerhard, and like you say, they're not going to have the most experience, or maybe they won't be the most streetwise in the world come the festival. Lost in Translation got his head back in front, but I'm going to talk about Buzz on the same day in the Ascot hurdle, who travelled supremely well, and it looks like the long walk hurdle is next over 3 miles, and you kind of wonder, has Buzz got just a bit too much speed for that race?
It certainly feels like it. He travels through his races with such enthusiasm. That being said, I suppose he won a Cesarewitch, which is 2-2 on the flat, and you usually stay a fair bit further than that from your flat form to jumps form. And he's becoming, I think he's more so one of these horses that they've got a good horse, and it quite like Plenty at the moment, they're seeing that 3 mile division being so open. Like, you only have to have a look, I know we'll come on to it in a few minutes, this long distance hurdle at Newbury on Friday. Like, it's a dreadful race really, depth wise, only 6 runners, not a great 6 at that. And you must go, if you've got a decent enough 2.5 mile horse, let's try and stay 3. You know, he mightn't be able to, but let's give it a go, because he's certainly got the ability to be in that division. And I suppose if you dropped him down to 2, you're facing Honeysuckle, you're not going to beat her. And 2.5, there's obviously no race at the festival, so you'd just be running in the Aintree hurdle. So those are the dilemmas. I can see why they're trying it. It still wouldn't surprise me, him running in the long walk and ending up missing Cheltenham and going straight back to the Aintree hurdle, because I think 2.5 is probably his ideal.
We'll definitely bump into Jeff Stafford this weekend. I think the family own Buzz, and we'll try and find out what they're thinking exactly. Before we go on to this weekend's racing, I do want to briefly touch on Shishkin, because Nicky Henderson came out today. Whether it was in line with Willie saying that he's going to send either Energumene or Shakaporswa to the Tingle Creek, I'm not 100% sure. You'd imagine it would be. But the actual quote was, he's fit enough, but I just don't feel like he's sparking enough and not quite giving us the right vibes I'd like to see. So he's not going to run in the Tingle Creek.
Yeah, I just don't think we'd be in this scenario if Willie wasn't running anything. in it, and Willie hasn't run a horse in the Tingle Creek, I think, since Undersow. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's the case. He hasn't certainly run a horse in it in the last couple of years, like a Shishkin or an Energamine, a really good, proper champion chase horse. And it does have a slight feeling that Nicky's seen that and gone, you know what, I'm okay. Now, what I'd absolutely love to see, because he has to get runs into him at certain stages, so you'd have to think that he's going to run in the Desert Orchid. Now, I would love, now I'm not sure that they will, because they've every entitlement to go for their Grade 1 at Sandown, but I'd love the Skeltons to call Nicky's bluff and actually not run Newbury Negra in the Tingle Creek and save him for Kempton, because we saw how much of a destruction job he gave Altior last year in that race. Because if he goes there, well, you can't keep dodging horses, otherwise you're going to end up in the champion chase like presenting Percy a few years ago in the Gold Cup, and you won't have run, or you'd have run over hurdles or something. It just seems bizarre. You just would love him to just throw him in. Like, I know it was before our time, but you remember the races with, you know, Moscow Flyer, Zertiop, Well Chief. Like, those horses seem to run against each other every third week, and they were absolutely superb 2 mile chasers. And yet here we are, Cotton Wool's out, and you know, we're going to end up having only a 4-runner race with no Shishkin, which is a bit of a disappointment as a National Hunt fan.
You'd love Skelton to send Newbury Negra there. I'd also love that, but I'd love Willie just to send Shishkin to both races. Wherever Shishkin goes, Shishkin turns up as well. Energamine, either of them. Just follow Shishkin. But let's talk about this weekend's racing then, and we'll start with Newbury on Friday. I think we should touch on John Bond making his hurdling debut. And I saw him, I went down to the Newbury Gallops morning. I would say there was 100 people, maybe 200 people at the racecourse in total. And I was in the pre-parade ring doing some work for Racing TV. And I think there must have been me and a social media exec from ATR. And honestly, it was like there was 50,000 people around him. He was sweating up badly, he looked terrified. I just think that he's 49 on Friday. And Good Risk at All, who is probably up there he's probably up there with the best bumper horses this side of the Irish Sea last year, definitely. He's 100 to 30. I think I'm going to back Good Risk at All purely on the basis that John Bond probably has more ability and more talent, but I think the occasion could get to him, because you'd imagine 20,000 people minimum will be at Newbury on Friday. It would definitely be a worry, and he got very, very hot in the prelims, and that was just a gallop morning. Well, what are you expecting on Friday? Because Good Risk at All is a decent enough marker, and his jumping left a bit to be desired on his hurdling debut, but you'd imagine that would come on as well. Yeah,
it's a fascinating race, not one that I'd have a play in whatsoever, because there is a part of me, and there always will be a part of me with John Bond, with the obvious connections to Duvan. I'd love him to be sitting there at 2-8 with Nico de Boinville doing what Rachel was doing on A Plus Tard and taking a pull. I think you were quite generous, really, in your description of Good Risk at All's jumping at Chepstow. He actually jumped like a fridge. I've never seen anything like it, and it was a dross race. Went off 1 to 3. He certainly has to come on an awful lot, so I can understand your angle, but at the same stage, I wouldn't be backing him myself. A race, as I say, would like to just sit back and watch, but my fingers are crossed actually that John Bond is a cut above.
Next up on the Friday is the long distance hurdle over 3 miles. Paisley Park is the market leader, indefatigable second favourite, and you've got the likes of Miss Milner interestingly coming over for Paul Nolan. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on that, and Thomas Darby in there as well. Miss Milner, you quite fancy her, I think.
Yeah, I do. Look, as I said a couple of minutes ago, I just don't think this is a very good race, really. You know, just the 6 runners, and I know there's 2 former Stayers hurdle winners in there, so it's maybe silly of me to say that it's a poor race. But Paisley Park, you'd certainly want to see an awful lot more. He looked laboured at Wetherby. I know he stayed on, and perhaps he might stay on to beat these, but he certainly won't do with my money on him at 15 to 8. Indefatigable is a good mare. She's not a world beater. Lisnagar Oscar's seemingly gone off a bit of a downward curve, really. And Mrs. Milner is one of the very few horses in this lineup that's actually coming here on the up. She won a Pertemps, she's won a listed race. Look, I make no bones about it. She needs to improve and improve an awful lot to get into this picture. But I think they're doing the right thing here. It's a Grade 2 contest. It's a soft one at that. And to be honest, if she ran very well here, you could potentially campaign her with a stayers hurdle in mind. I've had a little bit of a piece of her at 33s and 25 for a stayers hurdle. I think she's not the worst outsider bet in the world for that race. And I know Latest Exhibition potentially will go down the same route. But, getting £7, there's been, I know she only won a Pertemps last year, but the Pertemps is a pretty decent list of honours with Sire de Burley, Delta Work, Presenting Percy, all ending up being near on Grade 1 horses. So I'm hoping that the young horse can keep progressing, and I suppose there is a lot of bias behind my Paul Nolan selections, but this mare is very good, and fingers crossed she can give us another good day on Friday.
She is definitely one of your favourites. I'd be very happy to take on Paisley Park at the head of the market. It's interesting to find out which horse you take him on with. I probably would go with Thomas Darby at 6-1. I think there is a big race in him, and I do think he stays 3 miles. He's got speed as well. He's got a bit of class, and I think we're going to see a better Thomas Darby this season. I do think he'll be winning races. It was an all right return at Wetherby, but I think this is a nice opportunity for him to go very close. The Fighting Fifth comes next, and this is on the Saturday. We don't have decks for Saturday or Sunday at the time of recording, but Epatante is the favourite. Montmoral won't be running at the Jerry Field and at Newbury, so if he's going to run this weekend, it'll only be at Newcastle on Saturday. And there is a slight doubt because there's just simply no rain. It'd be interesting to see if he doesn't run here, where would Paul Nicholls go? But let's say he is going to run here. I know you're a massive fan of Montmoral, and you actually put him up for the Arkle in the anti-post videos. It's a shame he's not going novice chasing. Sorry for the reminder. But do you think he could threaten Epatante in this if he was to run?
Oh yeah, definitely. I know it's a big ask. Look, he's a 4-year-old. 4-year-olds don't have a very good record in open company hurdles, and that was, I suppose, my thought process behind putting him up for the Arkle. I think I put him up at 50s or something like that. Now, if only value paid the bills. But he's a very good horse. You look at what he did to Adagio at the end of last year, and I think Adagio is a very good horse. And obviously he ran such a good race in the Greatwood off top weight. Look, it's going to be hard if he does run, because it's not his ideal ground. At the end of the day, is he probably a 2.5 mile chaser in time? Probably so, but I think he'll have a very good season this year, one way or the other, and I'd like to see him put it up to Epatante. I'd take on Epatante really at the prices really, and if Montmoral doesn't run, I'd have a crack with So Royal. I think he's in the form of his life, and he's 3-1. I know he's probably up against it at Grade 1 level, but the last 2 runs have been as good as ever really, and he loves good ground. Like, there's going to be no horse more suited by the good ground than him in this field, so potentially he might be one to play, because personally I don't think Montmoral will run.
I'm probably of the opinion even if Montmoral runs, Epatante will win this. Ladbrokes Trophy time then, over at Newbury, the big one, and we're not going to go through every runner. Eclat de Rire here, you'd imagine if he runs he's going to have a lot of people's money on, given that Henry de Bromhead connection.
I think he goes very close, yeah. I don't think the ground is ideal. He's a little bit like Montmoral, but I do think he will run. This has been the long-term plan. I think his owner is actually an Englishman, or certainly living over in England and not far from Newbury, so it's always been the plan to run in this race. I think he's got a great chance. He's an upwardly progressive horse. He's the only one of these that could make up into a Gold Cup horse by the end of it all, and I suppose there's a party that wants that. From the Ladbrokes Trophy over the last number of years has maybe slightly fallen by the wayside in terms of that Gold Cup preparation, and this horse is more of your old school type, so as you say, I think he'll keep coming in for money, especially if he's declared tomorrow morning. I think he could go off favourite here. He could go off 4-1 at the end of the day, and I think he's got a massive chance. Also, Kitty's Light is. I had an infamous moment down in Christian Williams where I was actually holding the lead rope for Kitty's Light for 5 minutes, not knowing who the horse was, until Christian told me it was Kitty's Light. I gave the horse plenty of affection, because he's a legend of a horse for only a 5-year-old, and he's the likely type. I think out of all the horses in this field at 10-1, I think he's probably the safest each way, better than a lot of them, because I just couldn't see him out of a 4 or 5, which you're likely to get with the majority of bookies.
Yeah, I think Henry's will go close, but the one I'd probably back would be Remastered at 16-1, a good winner at the Reynoldstown at Ascot last year, and I was very encouraged by his return of the hurdles at Aintree. I know that they'd have left a heck of a lot of work to do with him, and it was definitely a blow for this in preparation. He's a front runner. He's a good jumper. I think he'll run very solid race, and he's 16 to 1, so I'll back him each way for the Ladbrokes Trophy. Let's then move over to Fairyhouse on Sunday, and we've got Phil Dorr in the Grade 3 Juvenile. We probably don't have to touch on him. He was very impressive, and I suspect if he does run here, he'll be very, very difficult to beat, and the market will tell you that as well. The Royal Bond is an interesting one. My Mate Mozzie, a horse that you like. Mighty Potter, 3 Stripe Life. In fact, there's 3 horses that you like. If they all turn up, which one wins?
Yeah, very hard when it's like the 3 kids running in this race, having to pick between them. Look, I would... eggs are eggs. I'd probably pick 2 and the other one would win, but I'm a massive fan of My Mate Mozzie. I've made that pretty clear throughout the year, and I think going right-handed will suit him as well. But that being said, in terms of my own interest, in terms of my anti-post interest, I'd love 3 Stripe Life to win this race, and he's probably the one I'd back at 10 to 3, 7 to 2. I think he's not a bad price at that. Look, his maiden hurdle form isn't up to a whole pile, but he beat Outlaw Peter as a bumper horse. He came 4th in the champion bumper. It's good old form, and just don't know, like with all these horses, they haven't beaten potentially that much in their maiden hurdles, so you're kind of just basing it off, hope and expectation more than anything. But certainly out of the Gordon 2, I'd be with 3 Stripe Life over Mighty Potter, and fingers crossed he can do the job.
Yeah, I don't fancy many horses over at Fairyhouse on the Sunday, but the one I would fancy would be 3 Stripe Life in the Royal Bond at those prices that you mentioned. Next comes up is the Drinmore, Beacon Edge, Gavianaco. I quite like Fury Road if he was to turn up here at 6 to 1. I think he's got plenty of class. At the head of the market, Beacon Edge is a good horse. Gavianaco's a good horse. Are they top notches? I'm not sure. Definitely think he's bang there, and at 6s I'm willing to take that risk. Is there one that you like specifically in here?
It's a hard one because half of them are bloody declared in the beginner's chase on the Saturday as well, so we don't know who's going to go to which race. I'm a massive fan. I know you were last year, Grand Paradis, and I thought he jumped absolutely super in his beginner's chase up until crumbling at 2 out. It was an uncharacteristic fall, an unlucky fall given how well he jumped. If he ran in this, I'd have a similar angle to you with Fury Road, because I think he's a Grade 1 horse personally. And then, but maybe at the top of the market, one that will run is Lifetime Ambition, and I think Lifetime Ambition has got a very good chance in this. He's a good jumper. He won that race at Grand Paradis, fell in, and fingers crossed he can run well.
And then the big one on the Sunday is the Hatton's Grace Hurdle, and the market will tell you that Honeysuckle will be very, very difficult to beat. Obviously her return after winning at Punchestown and the Champion Hurdle at Cheltenham in March, and look, you suspect that she will win this. What do you think will be her biggest danger?
I think it's a good race. Look, very hard to know whether Classical Dream will run. Again, ground related. Saldier will probably run. I think he's better at 2 miles than 2.5 miles. Abracadabras could be the springer in this. I surprised a lot of horses winning a lot of people, winning the Aintree Hurdle, because I didn't think he was an out and out 2.5 miler. But the form of that race with Buzz obviously in second and Miller's Bank in third, probably at the time everyone went but now actually it looks pretty good form, so he might be the one to give Honeysuckle the most to think about. I'm just hoping with latest exhibition he can run a good race. I'm not expecting him to go and beat Honeysuckle. If he came 3rd or 4th, I'd say Connections would be extremely pleased, because his Gold Cup will be on the 28th of December at Leopardstown in that 3 mile Grade 1, so I'm sure they're just looking for something to ease him back in. It's his first time running over hurdles for quite a while as well, so just hopefully a pleasant round for him to come 3rd or 4th, but I think Honeysuckle hard to beat.
Let's move on then to the weekend's best bets, and it's been decent form coming into this week. I've actually got 5. Which is quite a lot, but I'm hoping at least 3 or 4 of them can get the job done. One being Miller's Bank in the 12:40 Berkshire Novices Chase over 2.5 miles on the Friday, 9 to 4. I'm going to make him my nap of the weekend, or of the Friday and Saturday. And then Booth Hill, also on the same day, 1:50 Novices Handicap Chase. He worked super on that Newbury Gallops morning, 13 to 8. I think he'll win, and I think I might have a small saver on Mr. Coffee at 8 to 1. He worked alongside Hatton and looks pretty good, and 8 to 1 might be a big price for him. The other one on the Friday at Newbury is Fairyhouse d'Estraval in the 2:25 handicap chase at 3 to 1. I think that it's Venetia time of year, so Fairyhouse d'Estraval, I think will be winning on Friday. So Miller's Bank, Boot Hill and Fanion D'Estravael on the Friday. And then on Saturday, also at Newbury, I'm going to go for LA Belle to reverse the form with Nina the Terrier and a horse with no name. I actually think the big danger for her is Rainy Day Woman, the Paul Nicholls mare. And then my last one is at 1:15, the handicap chase. I'm going to back Killer Clown at 10 to 1 each way. I was encouraged by his 6th behind All Mankind in the old round at Aintree. I think he's a good horse. I think he's better than his mark. And this would be a lovely spot for him to go mightily close. And then also one just to mention, not part of the best bets, but I've been given a good word for It's What Unites Us in the bumper at Fairyhouse on Sunday. I think he's going to run, and I think they think a lot of him at Gordon's. And look, it's the Fairyhouse bumper that Envoy LM won. Your best bets, please.
Yeah, running through them. Also got 5, starting off with Newbury on Friday. Mrs. Milner, I think the best you can get now is 5 to 1 for the long distance. The long distance hurdle, sorry. I think she'll run a very good race. Fingers crossed she's up to the mark. Moving on to Saturday at Newbury, a Clad Rear in the Ladbrokes Trophy. I'd get whatever price you can at the moment because I think he'll shorten. And at Doncaster on Saturday, probably not where many people will have their eyes, the 143 No Risk Day Flow back in a 2 mile handicap hurdle. He's been dropped a couple of pounds, back to 2 miles. He's usually better second time out as well, so fingers crossed he can run a good race for Ollie Murphy. And then 2 over at Fairyhouse on Sunday in the Porterstown, Foxy Jack's eccentric horse, but I think if he gets out in front in the Porterstown over 3-5 and starts jumping well, he might be hard to peg back. He's the best handicapped horse in the race, I believe. And then in the handicap hurdle, the 2 mile handicap hurdle, Autumn Evening off a mark of 133, you can get 10 to 1. I'm backing him each way, and he'd be my nap of the weekend. I think he's got a massive chance. Was upside Tiupo when unseating at 2 out last time in the Fishery Lane. I think that's very good form in here. He previously won the Lartigue hurdle at Listowel as well, which is working out really well with horses like Perry Owens and Coventry in behind, who have all run good races since. So the 2 for them, and I'll match you with a little bit of information in that Fairyhouse bumper on the Sunday. If Paul Nolan's unraced horse Xander Clickan runs, they think an awful lot of him. So if Paul Nolan runs a horse in a bumper, they usually have a bit of ability. He usually sends the not so great ones straight over hurdles. So Xander Clickan, I think, might run okay if he's entered on Sunday in the bumper with It's What Unites Us.
We just need to find out about the rest of the 20 runners now, and we'll have all the information you need. Then a few youngsters just to run through. In fact, he's not so much a youngster, but Garster looks like he's going to make his chasing debut. I've backed him for the 4 miler in the anti-post video, so I'm hoping he can put in a good performance. But a couple of youngsters, Broomfield Berg for Nicky Henderson runs in the 12:35 at Doncaster. Also in there, Captain Quint, who was impressive last time out. He runs Adamantly Chosen, who won the Punchestown bumper. That form couldn't be working out much better. That Springwell Bay looked very good the other day. And then also Stumptown in the 2:11 at Fairyhouse on Saturday for Gavin Cromwell. I think he's quite a good horse, only a 4-year-old. And I think he will go mightily close. So there we go. Plenty of good racing this weekend. I do hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a like. And if you are at Fairyhouse on Sunday, do come over and say hello. We look forward to seeing as many of you there as possible. So yeah, very best of luck, and we'll see you soon.